Hello and welcome to Precon Decon, the video series where normally I deconstruct the pre-constructed decks of Magic the Gathering's history. In this video though, it is my 1 year anniversary of starting this project. So a while ago I put on the community page if people would like to see me do sort of a AMA like Q&A viewers viewers mailbag kind of video, and yeah, there was like quite a lot of response to that, and some people provided like some really good questions, so I thought we'd go ahead and do that. So yeah, it's been 1 year, 1 year birthday of Precon Decon. Looked at a lot of decks so far. This actually has worked out okay because this idea for this video coming up, because in in my absolute amazing planning there was actually no deck review video planned for the 1 year anniversary, so this has worked out okay, I think, do this as a video. But anyway, let's press on. Let's look at the questions that have been submitted. So like I said, people submitted like a lot of really good questions. Some of them really made me think, which is good, and yeah, I just hope the answers I give are interesting. I didn't respond to every question. I just picked what I thought were the best ones that would make the most interesting content. So settle in, I guess. I have no idea how long this video is going to be. But yeah, we'll get on, look at these questions, and I'll try and answer them to the best of my ability. So, first question, the first question is 3 questions. So, what's your favorite tribe mechanic? What's your least favorite precon you reviewed thus far? And will I continue into Pioneer and Commander precons? And thanks for the great reviews, which is just, that's not a question. That's just a really nice comment that is just really appreciated. So yeah, let's look at that favorite tribe and mechanic one first. So, I would say these 3 are my favorite tribes. So, elementals, clerics, but specifically creepy clerics, either like white-black clerics or Phyrexian clerics, specifically have to be creepy religious dudes, and warriors. And I can't really give any reason why, any particular reason why I like these 3 above kind of all others. Elementals, I guess, but just because I think they're just cool. I really like Animar as a creature, actually. Specifically, it has to be like the blue, red, green elementals, which I know is the colors they mostly show up in. But like, I really like multicolored elementals amongst those 3 colors. I just think they're cool. So it was really nice when one of the more recent core sets had like elementals as like a 3-color like draft archetype. I thought that was really cool. Clerics, like, as specifically has to be creepy religious clerics. Yeah, I mean all clerics are religious, but creepy religious guys. That's just a vibe I really like. I really like religious horror as a kind of like a trope. Yeah, it's just really good because I guess because I really like Warhammer 40,000, and in that, you have like chaos. So you have like chaos cultists and like the word bearers, who are space marines who are like really into their faith. I suppose that's kind of like it when faith has like a sinister edge to it. That's what I really like as a kind of a storytelling trope. So yeah, I always like it when clerics are creepy. And warriors, I just think warriors are kind of cool. I'm like the kind of guy, if I was playing like an RPG, I'd go with human warrior, just because I don't know, I think they're cool. Yeah, the warriors actually are. I like them so much, and they're in every color, which is nice as well. I've made a like a 2-player cube for me and my friend, who is the only basic person I play with regularly. We just have like a warrior draft cube that we play, and it's just a bunch of warrior tribal effects and warriors just smashing each other, and all the spells are like combat tricks, and yeah, it's just like really fun games of that, of just warriors getting equipped and hitting each other, and it's just a lot of combat, and it's just fun. I just like these. So these 3 are my favorite, I'd say. But runners up, in no particular order: tree folk. Tree folk are cool. Golems are cool. Giants. The sea monster group of like leviathans, octopi, serpents, and krakens. As an aside, I really wish that like we have snow creatures. I really wish there was like the super type. There was sea creatures. I would think that'd be great, and then it doesn't have to write out Leviathan, Octopus, Kraken all the time. I think having like sea be a type like snow would be really cool. And Defiler of Flesh is here to represent both Phyrexians and horrors, because both of those are very cool. Phyrexians are really great villains in Magic the Gathering. and horrors are usually just pretty cool. So there we go. There we go. That's favorite creature types. Favorite mechanics. So this is again a bit more sort of subjective. Again, no particular reason why I like these, I suppose. So I really like Champion. This showed up in Lorwyn. It's basically, it represents kind of a creature being upgraded into like a better version. So when you play a creature Champion, you have to exile a creature that shares creature type with it. And then when the champion leaves the battlefield, the other one returns. Like they go back to their normal life. And yeah, I don't know. It just has like a fun kind of like storytelling aspect. It means you can have like quite powerful cards be kind of undercosted because you're essentially having to give up a creature to get them. But also then it plays around with ETB and leaves the battlefield effects. I think it's just a lot of like fun potential, and like all the champion creatures I think are pretty fun. Exalted, absolutely love Exalted. So I've just recorded the M13 videos, and I really went off on one about the black and white Exalted deck because I just really like Exalted. I think it's just got really fun flavor of just one creature going out on their own, and like all their mates like cheering them on and like giving them extra power. I think that's just pretty fun. Yeah. I'd say monstrosity as well. Again, because it's like a mechanic that tells a story. In my opinion, you start off with like a fairly basic creature, and then you pay the monstrosity cost. They get a +1/+1. They get a certain number of +1/+1 counters, and they become monstrous, which like does nothing really. Mostly rules wise, it's just there to say you can only do it once. And especially creatures that like get bonuses for becoming monstrous, like Fleece Main Line here. When it becomes monstrous, it has hexproof indestructible. I just like these kind of cards because it's this kind of an investment that you drop the creature, and then later on, late game if they're still around, then you can make them useful. I just think that's kind of cool. They don't become necessarily like invalidated as the game goes on. And I'm gonna also on the subject of monstrosity, I would also say like Renown is close as well, but they're very similar. And then I would say Ward, which is kind of like what we have these days instead of Hexproof or Shroud. Ward, I think, is like a really good midpoint for this kind of evasion mechanic because Hexproof is kind of unfun if we're honest, because it just means like your opponent just cannot interact with it at all, which is just kind of like not that much fun. Ward at least gives an opponent a chance to interact with the permanent. They just have to pay the extra cost, and I just think it's a better way of doing things. And what I really like is that each color has their own specific way of doing Ward. Like white, blue, and green are usually just mana, extra mana you have to pay. Whereas like black and red are usually like paying life or like discarding cards. And also a really nice thing about Ward is that because Ward says it's unless the opponent pays that much mana, it gets counted. What that means is, if Ward is in every color, it means the text can't be countered actually matters against colors other than blue. Because if you have a red creature with Ward and you play like a red spell that says like, oh, this can't be countered, it bypasses the Ward, and I think that's just like a really fun mechanic. It just means that text affects more than like blue cards. So yeah, I really like these mechanics. And then in terms of like the worst deck I've reviewed. So this is the selection, I think, of ones that have really stood out to me, like as I've done this project of decks I don't like. I think some of them were, I'm justified in saying they weren't good. Like stuff like Pulverize or Dark Devotion or Swarm and Slam were really bad. I'd say out of these, the leveler decks from Rise the Eldrazi. Rise the Eldrazi in general was pretty bad. Like all 5 decks, I think, were not wonderful. But the 2 level decks, I think, were really, really, really bad. And I've gone back and I sort of like given it a think, and I said the blue black one was the worst deck I'd looked at, but I actually think it's the white blue one. Is probably the worst deck I've looked at so far. But the thing is, right? So even though these are bad decks, like I could talk about them like they provoked reaction, because I got like when I was reviewing the white blue, the levelers one, I got really kind of not not flustered, didn't get ants in my pants about it, but like there was like an emotion there, and then that's the kind of thing that like even a bad deck, when reviewing it, like I can still have a good time reviewing it because there's still like emotion attached to it. Like I can happily rant about a deck being bad, But honestly, when a deck is boring, when it's plain white bread, that's actually a struggle to review. Like if it's honestly like core set decks most of the time, when it's like just a very sort of like competent but dull, say like, the classic is like green red aggro, right? Um, and like usually there's just not much to say about it because like the card section is usually kind of fine. It's not kind of doing anything interesting in terms of theme, but it's okay. Those are the decks I actually find, those are my least favorite ones to review, because there's not really much to say other than like, oh, it has these cards and these cards are fine. And like, I really have to kind of vamp, I guess, for time and just try and think of like stories or opinions about individual cards rather than the deck as a whole. So yeah, that's actually kind of my least favorite decks to review, just when they're solid like C plus decks which aren't doing anything too interesting, and they're not even that bad. They're just adequate. Yeah, adequate decks are my least favorite to review because a bad deck, I say, I can rant for ages about that. And then regarding Pioneer and Commander decks, so from the start of the project, I said Commander decks are a hard no. As there's a later question where I'll go into a bit more about my thoughts on Commander, but Commander decks are a hard no. I will never look at Commander decks. Pioneer decks, possibly. I'm not super keen on reviewing them, but I mean possibly. Because I want to get through all the like the normal set precons and then maybe like the Planeswalker decks and the dual decks, because a lot of people have been asking for those, so I really want to do those. After that, we're getting into kind of weird territory. Then it's like Pioneer and Event decks, or Challenger decks even, which by that point I think I'll have been doing the project for about like 2 years, and honestly I might be kind of burned out on it by then. There's also the thing as well, like the Pioneer decks and the Challenger decks, all those kind of things, are more. They're built to be like more competitive, by nature, and I'm not confident, honestly, in my ability to review these because I think they require like better knowledge of like the meta at the time. Like I had a quick look at the deck list for the Lotus Field combo, and I was looking at them just like I don't understand how this deck wins. I'm not confident in my ability to review it and I guess deconstruct it in a way that I have for like these other precons, which are a lot more simpler built and kind of janky, and these are built a bit better. So I'm not saying no, but let's say the scales are tipping towards unlikely on those. But as I said, Commander decks are a hard no, and as I say, I'll talk more about Commander in a bit because one of the questions was about that. Oh, here we go. Do you play Commander, and if so, what decks do you run? Have you played Magic competitively? So, thoughts on Commander. Let's get into that. So, I have tried Commander. I bought the first set of Commander decks back in 2010. I want to say the ones with the wedge color ones, the one with like Animar and Zedru, and I can't remember all the others. But anyway, that first set, and tried Commander, and it was okay. It was okay, but it sort of like drifted away from it because we just did. And then I tried it again a few years ago with the Strixhaven Commander decks. I got the white red one and the green black one, and I gave it a few tries, and it just wasn't for me. You know what? I just don't like Commander, honestly. I find the games go on super super long. um it's I think there has to be such a kind of like group consensus on like essentially like gentlemen's rules on like, all right, okay, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do like this degenerate combo. um a part of it for me is like deck building as well, because I like normal constructed deck building. I like kind of picking say like 10 cards and being like, right, I am going to have like play sets of each of these and then my land, and that's done. Like I only essentially have to make 10 choices of those cards. But for Commander, like, you got to make you got to make like 70 choices because it's all singletons and stuff. And to be honest though, about 70 of those choices, like 20 of them are pretty much like Commander staples, like like Arcane Signet and Soul Ring and Swiftfoot Boots or whatever. I don't know. But also it's just general like playtime as well. Because when I was going to my local shop, there'd be guys there who would start a Commander game right at the start of the evening, and they still wouldn't be finished by sort of like 2 hours later. and that to me is honestly just sounds like a nightmare. Like, especially if you got knocked out early, right? And then like you're just standing there waiting for the other sort of like two or three people to finish playing. It just that's just I'd rather play multiple quick games than one long game, and that's something that's kind of applies in all games I play. Like yeah, you know, like tabletop war games or RPGs or board games or anything. I'd rather play multiple games, like have a good time doing that. We're going to get really invested into like a big sloggy game. And also there's just other things Commander like I don't know. I just don't kind of. I'm not super keen on. I say the play length or like tracking commander damage. I always found um very finicky. You know, what I actually wish was that Brawl had become more popular. So Brawl is like a commander variant. You have a 60 card deck, and it's still singletons. Um, but you don't track command damage. You start off with just 30 life, and I really wish this had gotten more like traction and become more popular, to the extent that Commander is these days. Because I think this is basically, I think if you want to do like a Commander-esque format, I think this is the perfect way of doing it. The only problem with Brawl is that Wizards in their infinite glory tied it to like set rotation, and that's the big appeal of Commander, is you can use basically any card from your collection, whereas Brawl was essentially has all the downsides of standard, and that has to keep rotating and stuff. So like if you had the Brawl format and rules, like 60 cards singleton, you know, 30 life, it's still, you know, it's still essentially Commander, but with the smaller deck size, and more like traditional life tracking, then I'd be more interested in it. But yeah, I really wish Brawl was more popular. But if I was gonna play Commander, then I'd probably do a deck with Queen Marchesa, like this a kind of like really dicky politics deck. Like I'd basically, if I'm gonna, yeah, if there's gonna be like a long game, I'm gonna be responsible. Like if we're gonna, yeah, the big appeal Commander is like, oh, it's a really long game with lots of politicking. You know, we're just gonna double down on that and just you know, go full hog, do a politics deck. Queen Marchesa is great. She's a great creature in one of my favorite thrills, sort of three color combinations. Realistically, I probably wouldn't do that. I'd probably do some sort of like janky, like elemental tribal deck or warriors or something. But yeah, that's my thoughts on Commander. It's not for me. If you like it, that's absolutely fine. I've tried it, not my cup of tea. So as for competitively playing, I have never played competitively. The closest I have done is go to like pre-releases. That is honestly as competitive as I'm willing to go. Like a pre-release where there's maybe like just sort of prizes of extra boosters at the end. I'm not really a competitive person by nature. I find when you know, getting competitive kind of ruins it for me. Like it's a lot of pressure. It's quite stressful. Kind of honestly brings out the worst of me, if I'm honest. I'd rather just kind of play casually and just like have a good time, rather than, you know, get kind of, I don't know, stressed or, I say, anxious about playing. If there was like actual cash on the line, my god, like no way. So yeah, so I'm a um big proponent of like just casual kitchen table magic, because that for me is the game. That's where the fun is. Again, if you like playing competitively, I'm not saying you're wrong. It's just not for me. It's just not my. That's not how I enjoy the game. But that's the thing about Magic the Gathering, is there are so many ways to enjoy the game, right? Because you can play super competitively, you can play kitchen table jank with just a bunch of random commons or whatever, or anything in between, and that is, I think, one of the strengths of the game. Right now, the next question. What is your favorite format overall, and what is your favorite format outside of the big ones, i.e., no modern commander, etc.? So instead, smaller formats like Pentagram and Star Magic. So my favorite format overall is honestly like draft. Just any set, I'd be happy to do like sealed limited draft. That is my sweet spot. I really like drafting. I really like this idea of, you know, taking a random bunch of cards and making a deck, and just like, you know, if you do well out of the cards you open, then like great. If you open some bombs, that's great. If you do badly, well, it's fine. Like I opened some trash. That's just kind of the way it goes. So yeah, I would say like just sealed limited, that kind of draft feel is what I like, and it's kind of actually why I like these precons, and because the precons are like have this feel of like it's a semi-competent deck you managed to put together from like set boosters, I suppose. If we're talking just general constructed, I guess just modern, just because it's got the biggest card pool, and I think it's just what we played by default. Like we never said like yeah, like, oh, let's play modern, or like we'll make modern decks. Like we just played the cards we had, which just were modern set legal. So yeah, just that, I suppose. Never been too hot on like following formats exactly, but yeah, modern, I suppose, just by default, because that's what we played the most. So in terms of other like weirder formats, so I mentioned two-player cube before that. I've built a couple of those for me and my friend, and we do sort of like a draft from that, which is really fun because he really likes draft as well. It was really interesting that Star was mentioned as well. So Star, if you don't know, or Pentagram Magic, is like a really excellent five-player format, which I tried to get going at the game store I was going to a couple of times, but everyone was just like, "No, that sounds difficult," you know. So it isn't at all. So what it is, it's a five. It has to be specifically five players. So I actually played this quite a lot back in the day when I actually had like four friends who played Magic. Um, if you got a play group that plays Magic a lot, count yourself lucky because it'll go away one day and you'll be sad like me. um, so yeah, it's a five-player format. Basically, you'll sit around the table like this. There is like a variant where you can say like, oh, each one has to play like a particular color or whatever. So the idea is that the two players next to you are your allies, and the two players across from you are your enemies. And the winner of the so it's still like elimination essentially, but the winner is the first player who eliminates their two enemies. And it can be really interesting because your allies, like one of your allies wants to help you take down one of your enemies, but they want to protect the other one because that's their ally as well. So it's really interesting. Like gives a good amount of politicking and stuff, and it's not like last man standing. It is whoever wipes out their enemies first. So yeah, really interesting multiplayer format. And to say, if you can do it, so like one player plays mono white, one player plays mono blue, one's mono black and stuff, and sit in kind of like color star order, it can be really fun. And Tower is another format which I don't see mentioned that much. So this is a format I used to play a lot back in the day, like back in the day. I mean, that could be anyway, couldn't it? When I was like much younger, say like 17, 18, with sort of another friend who was kind of interested in Magic, but like we didn't have like a huge collection. So what we did was play Tower, which is essentially you just have a big shared deck between you, and you just both draw from the same deck. And yeah, we did some of the rules like with mana and stuff, like oh, you can start off with like 3 land of any color out or whatever, that kind of thing. So it was just like a big sort of like 300 card stack of like just random cards. Yeah, and you do that, and it's essentially still like a draft format, but it's not really draft because you're just drawing straight off the top of this deck, and it could be anything. So yeah, Tower is okay, but Star is I've got some really nice memories with Star Magic. So yeah, give that a go. If you you and four friends playing a game, yeah. So yeah, really like both these formats. Coffee or tea? Neither. So I actually don't like hot drinks at all. The most I will sort of like go for is like maybe a hot chocolate in in like winter if my wife and I go to like Costa in the winter or something and she's buying a drink. I'll go like, oh, I'll have a like a gingerbread hot chocolate or something. And but I'd never have one at home. And the only other hot drink I have is this is going to make me sound like I'm 10 years old. But if I have a sore throat, I have a hot Ribena, and that's really nice. It soothes my throat. But in general, no, I don't like tea or coffee. I hate coffee. I hate the taste of coffee. Iced tea is okay, I suppose. But no, generally, I'm a cold drink person through and through. I like to feel refreshed when I have a drink. So yeah. Oh, here's a good essay from resident essayer Blekja. Hope that's pronounced right. So, other than Magic and video games, which obviously you dabble in streaming, what other hobbies do you have? I get the idea. You've mentioned something like 40k at some point. Did you get into war games at all? How if you've been to that, what factions do you play? And about D&D, have you got into that? What characters do you play? Do you DM? How long is your current campaign be going for? Right, lot to unpack there. So, in short, yes, I have the nerd trinity of Magic the Gathering, Warhammer 40,000, and D&D. I am into all of those. Although my history with Warhammer 40,000 in D&D is a little more complicated. I guess we'll cover sort of like the basics before I sort of deep dive into like the hobbies behind these as a whole. So Warhammer 40,000, that's probably my longest running hobby, and it was like the first real like sci-fi franchise I got into because I got into Warhammer, or I became aware of it when I was about 11, I'd say. Um, and it was during like a dip in the time in the UK where like Star Wars wasn't as relevant. Like the special editions hadn't been released yet, and that was the first time I'd seen Star Wars. And by that point it'd been so about I guess like 10-ish years since the films had been out. So like I didn't really know much about say Star Wars. I wasn't interested in Star Trek because it looked kind of boring to me. So Warhammer was like the first real sci-fi franchise I got into, and it bit down hard. And it to this day is my favorite sci-fi franchise. I really like, all the lore behind it. The models obviously great. The games not so much. Played the games for a while because basically I didn't know any better. But yeah, I'll cover that in the sort of the next few slides. I have dropped out of the game, honestly, just because I just don't think they're great games. Then I don't think they're super well written, but I do love the models. I do like collecting, painting, and playing. Faction wise, I've sort of dabbled with everything over the years because I've just been playing it for so long, or involved with it so long. But basically, I always go back to Marines. Always go back to Chaos Marines because like I'm basic and I like my power armor boys. And I guess like orcs. Orcs are kind of cool. I had a brief dalliance with Gene Stealer cults, though being my favorite faction. But no, at the end, it's for me. It's all about Imperial Chaos and Orcs. Those are my favorites. Although there's the big new box that's at time of recording. It's just been announced, Leviathan, and that's got lovely new Tyranids in it. And I've kind of always wanted to do Tyranids, so we'll see. Regarding D&D, so the first time I actually played D&D was fourth edition. That was which is like a edition that gets, I think, really disproportionately hated. I really like 4e. Like it, a lot of design elements of it I think are really good. And honestly, I get so tired of seeing like even to this day, like comments like, "Oh, 4e was like a video game, and like 4e was bad because it wasn't the same. There was no rules for role playing. Like, there's never been rules for role playing. Like, get over yourself." So that's I think people bashing on 4e is kind of a bit of a trigger for me. But yeah, 4e was the first edition I got into at ground level essentially when I was sort of getting into more RPGs, which was I guess like 18-19 when I was becoming aware of them. Like 3.5 edition was sort of reaching its tail end. The first RPG I actually got into was D20 Modern, which is essentially 3.5 rules, but it's set in modern day, and that was my jam for like a really long time. D20 Modern, and then played a bit of fourth edition, which I really liked. And if you disagree, you're wrong, basically. And then fifth edition came out, and I thought it was okay at first. And I don't know, like maybe it's me being a grumpy old man, but because I see fifth edition now get like all the attention. Fifth edition is like the commander of D&D. Like everyone talks about it, and just no one talks about anything else. It's just so all consuming. But yeah, like I've still had fun with D&D. I'm also pretty much a forever DM to answer that question. I don't really get to play that often because I'm the one who buys the books. So basically, I'm the one who gives a shit and sets up the game, if we're honest. But let's dive into like sort of the what I said there about exploring other games. So what I play these days is instead of Warhammer 40,000 or Age of Sigmar or whatever, I play one-page rules, which is free. It is a free game. It is miniature agnostic, so I can use all my Warhammer models. All the rules are free, like the army rules and stuff. Yeah, and it's just a super good game. Like it does a lot of things really well, like which has taken like Games Workshop say like 30 years to try and like improve upon. This does it in sort of like I say like 2 pages of rules, honestly, or like one double-sided page of rules. Like it does alternating activations, which is really fun. It boils down units to it cuts off a lot of the fat. It just boils down units to basically how good they are at fighting and how tough they are, and that is it. That's like they only have two stats. Yeah, and it's just really fun. And like my friend and I have really got into this. It was like a real breath of fresh air during like ninth edition Warhammer, which we tried and we hated because it was like so fiddly and there's so many rules. And then we tried this and like we're just not looking back. We are fully committed to one page rules. It's really fun because we can play a game in like an hour. And yeah, it really captures for me like the nostalgic feeling of Warhammer, which is like when we were playing when we were sort of like teenagers, like third edition, like really basic games where the rules are really streamlined. It captures that kind of feeling. It still feels like playing Warhammer, but without having to drop ridiculous money on rules that are just gonna get obsoleted or updated a month later or something. So really really recommend one page rules if you are into wargaming in any way, because to say it's free, you've got nothing to lose, like just give it a go, honestly. And then RPGs. So I'm not so interested in D&D anymore. Um, and I say that's probably me being contrarian and like, oh, 5e is really popular. But the thing is, like, I only, new people to the hobby, they only see D&D, right? Because D&D is like the game, right? But the thing is, like, the RPG hobby is so immense and broad, and there are so many games out there which are like so good and are worth exploring. I see so many sort of threads on Reddit just like, I want to do a D&D game, but like I want to include like horror elements or investigation or politics or lightsabers, and just like my dude, there are games that do exactly what you want to do without having to hack D&D, or just learn a new game. And like this is the I'm going off on a real tangent here, but this thing with D&D, I think, is that for a lot of people, it's their first game, and they see it and like, oh, it's actually quite complex. And then if you try and introduce them to a new game, they're like, oh, but we already know D&D and stuff. Like, yeah, but D&D is actually quite a hard game to learn. It's quite crunchy. Whereas if you want to try this game, it is literally one page of rules. Like, it's not going to require a lot of investment, my dude. Like, just give it a try, honestly. So, as I say, I don't really play D&D these days. I don't really play that much anymore at all. Just don't have a regular group. Like scheduling is always a nightmare. But yeah, I've been recently exploring like a whole bunch of new games, and really had my horizons broaden. I actually like writing RPGs more than I like playing them, I think. But this is just a list of like some of the games that I've either played or I have rules for. Yeah, and all of these are pretty great, honestly, and they definitely deserve more attention and more exploration. The One Ring in particular, actually, I've played that quite recently, and that is fantastic. I really like the One Ring, which is obviously Lord of the Rings. But all of these are fantastic games that all deserve more attention than D&D, which is sort of the Warhammer problem of like it's kind of a bit of a mess rules wise, and yeah, and owned by a company that is not doing great at the moment, if we're honest. At time of recording, we've just had the whole Pinkerton thing, which I don't know too much about it, but I think there was some cards that were some guy got some cards that he wasn't meant to, and Wizards of the Coast sent round like private investigators to like essentially break into the house and take them back or something. It's a whole mess. I do not know what's going on at WotC these days, but they seem hell bent on destroying their own reputation. But anyway, these games are all pretty cool. Yeah, definitely worth a look. Anyway, in terms of other hobbies, also just like board games in general. My wife and I really like board games. So we've got a big collection of those. Of all of them, my favorite are deck building games, because yeah, I'm addicted to cardboard crack. So I really like these, particularly ones from Cryptozoic. These Cerberus Engine DC deck building games. These are really fun. We really like playing these. There's like a bunch of expansions of them, but like we've got other board games as well, like Dice Forge or Baron Park, or I'm just looking at my shelves now, or Photosynthesis, or Forbidden Island, like a whole bunch of board games. So yeah, really like those in terms of hobbies. Right, if you could bring back one particular line of precons to the current game, which would it be and why? Are there any general adjustments you'd make to improve it? Similarly, is there any other sort of product which hasn't been done before but you feel there is a good niche for? I would 100% bring back Planeswalker decks. I think these are a absolutely critical teaching tool to new players. I do not understand why Commander is the introductory level these days. Like if you're brand new getting to Magic, like here's Commander, here's like 100 card deck, all of singletons, all with like weird mechanics. and it's like a weird non-standard format. There you go. I would 100% bring back Planeswalker decks. As kind of traditional 60 card constructed introductory products for new players, and even I say just for casual players like me who just want to pick something up and get like a bunch of cards from the latest set. So yeah, I would 100% bring these back. In terms of a product that I think could exist, so Jumpstart I thought was really interesting because I really like this. We'll talk about it in the next slide. So Jumpstart is, for me, combines the kind of pre-conish feel with Draft, but it's a lot simpler in that you get 2 Jumpstart packs and they each contain a random theme, so like goblins or dogs or wizards or something a bit more abstract, and then you smash them together and you've got a 40 card deck. And that I think is pretty cool. A while ago, I tried building like my own kind of Jumpstart mini decks. Before I was just like, I'm just going to build a cube instead. But yeah, I think Jumpstart is pretty cool, and I would go so far. And it's a product I think that should have existed for a long time. And I would hasten to add. So Smash Up is a game I've always wanted to like, and every time I always think I'm going to enjoy it more than I actually do when I sit down to play it, because I think the premise of Smash Up is great, that you have all these like different faction decks and you pick 2 and you literally smash them together and shuffle them together, and like, oh, I've got dinosaur pirates against ninja aliens. Oh, how lol random and awesome and epic, and I don't know. It's big early 2010s energy from Smash Up. But what I thought would be fun would be like a box like this, right? But for Jumpstart. And then you have like, we have the game night boxes where you have like the 5 60 card decks. What about Jumpstart night, where you get a box like this and it's, say, I don't know, 20 Jumpstart mini decks, and then you just have that, and then that can just sit there to one side and be like, oh, do you want a quick game of Magic? Like, okay, cool, we'll just pick out 2 of the Jumpstart faction decks, have it like fixed distribution, or maybe like the old deck builder toolkits, have it like half of it be set, so like, oh, there's definitely 2 of each color, and then the other, say, 10 are like random ones or whatever. You could have it like that. Yeah, so I think this would be fun, like an actual just Jumpstart box, for Jumpstart night. I don't know. I thought that'd be kind of okay. So, what are your personal favorite precons you've covered? And as an aside, what are your top 5 nostalgic favorite cards? So, let's talk about the favorite precons so far. So, I'm going to say pretty much Time Spiral Block. I'm being biased, and it is a lot of nostalgia, but man, I really love Time Spiral Block, and I like pretty much all the decks in that set, because there's 12 of them. Like, the only one I can think of that's like a bit iffy is Future Shock, the red-green one from Future Sight. But in terms of deck quality, I think these are all great, because like Time Spiral Block is such a weird block. Like, there's so many like different mechanics flying around, which means there's a lot of variety in terms of theme decks and stuff. So yeah, I would say I can't really narrow it down to one, if I'm honest. I would probably say just Time Spiral Block in general is my favorite precons. Let's just leave it to that. And then nostalgic cards, we're just going to go through these really quickly. So we're going to say in classic border and in modern border, because that was the only way I could really do it, because I've got a lot of favorite cards, and it's hard to say like what is my absolute favorite card in the game. I just have a lot of like ones that I'm very fond of, so we'll just say that. So in the classic frame, we'll say Capsize, Volra's Stronghold. This was the very first legendary card I opened up. I remember I opened it in a pack, and I was like, whoa, a legendary land. I immediately ran back to the store, and like, I just opened this, how much is it worth? And at the time he was like, oh, it's like $8. It is worth a lot more now, and I have it just in a box upstairs somewhere, so I need to find it, because it is worth a bit. Defense of the Heart, this is just like, gives me good nostalgic vibes from playing playing in like high school, middle school. Armadillo Cloak, and Browbeat. Actually, Browbeat might be one of my favorite cards in the game, because I think it's great. Yeah, it's red card draw, and it's fine. So that's classic frame, and then modern frame. Paradox Haze, like absolute combo fuel. Love Paradox Haze. Sizan, Perverter of Truth, is also fantastic. Love Sizan. Vampire Nighthawk, Nighthawk is a brilliant creature. We all like it. Vent Sentinel. This is again actually generally might be one of my favorite cards because I build a red defender deck on it out of it, and it managed to work. So yeah, in that regard, if it's a card that lets you build like a kind of a weird deck, I think that's worth consideration. And Evolution Charm. This is a really good card from Planar Chaos. Just a really good multifunctional card. So yeah, those are my say 10 at time of recording, the 10 favorite cards that were most in my mind, I suppose. Right, what's your ideal grouping of a set's pre-constructed decks, both in amount and deck archetypes? So I sort of mentioned Time Spiral, just because the amount of mechanics there meant there was a really good variety of decks. But I would say any set that has like factions, where each faction has a keyword, like usually does like a really good job of this. But the one that sprang out into my mind when I was thinking about this was Ravnica, original Ravnica, City of Guilds. Because in those first four, you've got Selesnya, Boros, Dimir, and Golgari, and each of those four decks does something very different. So Golgari is all about the graveyard and like dredging, which is like which at the time was like a really fun alternate way of playing. Dimir was kind of a slower controller deck, all about mill. Boros was kind of very aggressive with a bunch of creatures, and Selesnya was go wide and also using your creatures to convoke out bigger spells. So I think that was like a really nice variety of like different strategies, and amongst the decks, they all felt very different. And it's like I said, any set that I think has factions does a really good job of that, like where they all feel very different to one another. But I would also say Magic 2012 is a really good, really good selection of like decks there in terms of variety, because I've done the recording on those and I've forgotten like kind of how varied they are. Because in M12 you've got a red-black Bloodthirst deck. You've got the blue-black kind of combo control deck with the Empire artifacts, which is super weird, but also great because it shows a specific combo to like new players. And then I think there's then like a green-white aura deck. I can't remember them all now. But anyway, like there's like what I'm saying is like there's a good variety. There's like a control one, there's a combo one, there's kind of auras. Like it shows like a good variety. Again, they all feel different. And which is honestly what like a core set should do. It's meant to be a good introduction to new players to say like, look, these are all the different colors, and this is what they all do differently, and sort of show that off. So yeah, I would say all the core sets do it, but I'd say M12 does it really, really well, in my opinion. All right. What are some of your dream precon themes that you would have loved to see? Ones that either didn't happen in their respective sets, or ones from newer sets after the precon era. So this is probably my favorite question because it really got me thinking. Because I love thinking up ideas for decks, not necessarily building decks, but like this is just a really great question. So let's go back to those Planewalker decks, where I said they're like a really good introductory product, both for new players and also just to kind of show off like what the set does, right? So these went up until I think Theros Beyond Death. I think that was the last one, or the core set just after it, I think. So that would be M21. I think it was just before the pandemic. But the last main set that had it was Theros, and it was Elspeth and Ashiok. So, and then from then, Wizards were like, "Oh no, we're just going to do," because that was it. Because Ikoria that year coincided with the summer release, and they're like, "Oh, we're going to do Ikoria Commander," and then that was the point where it's just like, "Oh, we're just going to do Commander now for every set." And okay, I don't agree with it as a decision, but it's what happened. So, basically, my idea is Planeswalker decks for like Ikoria, Kaldheim, and Zendikar Rising. So for Ikoria, we're just going to go through these Planeswalker decks here. So I would have had green-red Vivian against red-white Luca. Vivian's theme would have been creatures that mutate and keyword counters. Luca's would have been cycling, because red-white cycling was like the Ikoria red-white archetype. And also there's a bunch of cards which like the buddy cards, like cards that care about you having a human and cards that care about you having a non-human. So I would have filled the deck up with those, and also like it's very true to both their characters. Like Vivian cares about making creatures bigger and stronger with keyword counters and mutate. Luca cares more about animals living, the monsters living in harmony with humans, I guess. So yeah, that's what I would have done for Ikoria. Zendikar Rising would have done blue white Jace against green white Nissa. Jace would have been blue white party. So a bunch of like warriors, rogues, wizards, and clerics, and a bunch of cards that care about party. They get better, like how many creatures you have in your party. Definitely would have done that. White blue means you can get all 4 creature types because you have white for the clerics and the warriors, and you have blue for the wizards and the rogues. And then for Nissa, would have been this +1/+1 counter theme that was in sort of green-black in Zendikar Rising. There's a bunch of creatures that care like, oh, it enters with +1/+1 counters, and like when a creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it, like attacks or dies, you get some effect. So it would have done something like that. And then for Kaldheim, we would have done Kaya versus Tybalt. So Kaya's would have been white-black, and that would have played to the Kaldheim archetype of like foretell and playing multiple spells in a turn, because I think that was the white-black archetype. Like, oh, if you've played your second spell this turn, you get this effect. So we've done that, and then Tybalt's would have been black-red, and that would have been just around boast effects, like a bunch of creatures with boast, because I think that fits his character really well, and like cards just make treasure, and kind of just a big kind of ramp deck, I suppose. And then obviously all these decks would have had like their own like Planeswalker deck versions of the Planeswalkers, who are like really expensive and like not competitive at all, but like kind of fun and okay for a casual game. So yeah, that was my thoughts on those Planeswalker decks. But I also want to talk about. I'm going to say like D&D is Universes Beyond. I know it doesn't say D&D is technically not a Universes Beyond set, but like it is though. Like it basically is, and also Warhammer 40,000. So obviously, Adventures in the Forgotten Realms got its own complete set, which is like okay, it's fine, and 40k just got Commander decks, which again is like fine. I wouldn't expect 40k to get its own set, but what I think was really really missing from these. So we've got Lord of the Rings Tales of Middle-earth coming out, and that comes with an actual genuine starter kit. Like it's 2 pre-constructed decks to go against each other. The idea being, if you haven't played Magic before and you see this and like, oh, I like Lord of the Rings and I've sort of heard of Magic the Gathering, I'll pick up this set and my friend and I will play these decks against each other and we'll get into it that way. This absolutely, in my opinion, needs to exist for the D&D set and the Warhammer 40,000 set, because like you want to bring in people into Magic the Gathering who have not played it but are familiar with this franchise, right? So like a D&D player sees this and be like, oh, I've never played Magic the Gathering, but oh hey, like D&D, D&D, and say, oh, it's a starter kit and it's fairly cheap and it has 2 decks. Like whereas like a D&D player sees like a massive like Commander deck, like what is Commander, what is any of this, like, oh, I don't know enough about it, but I don't know enough about this project. But if you see starter kit, then it's like, oh, that seems a lot more accessible. And the same with Warhammer 40,000, like, oh, I play Warhammer 40,000, but I don't know anything about Magic. But oh, a starter kit, that sounds like a good entry point for me, and like it's not too expensive as opposed to like a £40 Commander deck, So, in my opinion, both D&D Adventures in the Forgotten Realms and Warhammer 40,000 needed like a starter kit like this. So what we would have done for D&D, right? We would have done the decks would have been blue-red dice rolls against white-black dungeons, because those are the 2 big like new mechanics in the set, right? And this works out so well because both these colors have a lot of it's the draft archetype. Like blue-red cared about rolling dice, and black-red cared about venturing into the dungeon. You could splash some green as well if you wanted all colors represented. But what you could do with this as well, so you have these 2 starter decks, you have these, like maybe new alternate versions, exclusive versions maybe of the starter kit as for your face cards, and then also package it with some dice, because then that's even more incentive for people to buy it, because then D&D players can buy it and be like, oh, it's a starter kit. Oh, and also there's like a dice set in there, and like, oh, I'm a D&D player, I'm never gonna say no to more dice. And also these dice are needed in the game as well, because you can use these for counters. All the blue-red cards would require like rolling a d20. So, right, am I being stupid? Like this seems really obvious to me. Like, and again, like a Magic player who's maybe never played D&D might pick it up and be like, oh, like the world of D&D looks really cool from these cards. Oh, hey, now I've got a set of dice ready to go if I want to play it myself. It's just both parties want this. Both parties want a nice set of dice, you know? It doesn't have to be like a big set like this, like just the sort of basic set of the polyhedrals, but, you know, it just seems so obvious to me. And the same with Warhammer 40,000. I would have done White Blue Imperial versus either Black Red Chaos or Green Red Tyranids. Again, have them face off against two pre-constructed decks face off against each other. The thing is, though, with the Warhammer set is because it was only created for Commander, you'd to like fill out these decks, you'd have to like they'd have to make some new cards basically. So you know, it's not all just one-offs. So you'd have to have stuff like this. This is some really shit mock-ups I did, but like stuff like tactical squad for the Imperium deck and Traitor Legion squad for the Chaos deck, and you know, you just have to do cards like that to sort of bulk it out. But again, package it with some Warhammer dice, which which the people who pick it up can go like, oh sweet, I've got some dice for counters and stuff, and Warhammer players who pick it up and go like, oh sweet, now I've got some dice for when I play Warhammer. And again, it's just like both parties want to get some nice dice, you know. And it just seems mad to me that like when you're doing a set that involves dice, it seems insane not to include dice. Well, it seems insane not to do like a really nice entry-level starter product that gets new players interested, but also include some dice with it as well because people like dice. So I don't know. That was my thoughts on that. So yeah, real rabbit hole with that question. Right, again, another 3 questions here. So when did you start playing? What's your favorite color, and what's your favorite color combo? So I would say I started really playing Urza's Saga. This is where I started playing. This would have been like high school years, I suppose. So it would have been like 15, 16, I suppose. This is when I really started playing with other people. Up until now, I had bought like like Tempest block stuff, like but like not really played it that much. Like I didn't really, I don't know, have anyone to play with. Honestly, sad only child noises, I suppose. But I actually learned to play by playing the PC game, the Chandelier game. This is how I actually learned to play, because up to now I had a bunch of cards and be like, I don't know what these mean. But I remember playing this and like learning the game from this and like kind of how to build decks from this. And I remember the Chandelier game with a lot of fondness. Like the tutorial FMV videos were like really, really campy and really fun, if you can find those. In terms of favorite color, it's red. I was umming and ahhing like, oh, is it green? Is it blue? No, it's 100% red. I love red. It's just such a great color. Yeah, there's not much more to say on it. Especially red when it's stuff other than burn. When red gets really interesting, that's why I like. If we're ranking other colors, I would say red primarily, and then green, blue, black, white. White is my least favorite, which is that's just how it is. So I'd really like to hear what other people's rankings of colors are. In terms of color combinations, I threw together this really quick tier list. This is how I would rank all the sort of 2 and 3 color combinations. So right at the top is green, red, green, blue, and green, red, blue, like Timur. And then, you can see what the ranking is. So at the bottom there is white, blue, blue, black, Bant, and Esper. Those are my least favorite color combinations. Those have never really interested me that much. It's weird to say that like white is my least favorite color and like four of them at A rank. But anyway, so that's how I would rank color combinations. Right, maybe a non-MTG related one. What's your day job? Well, thankfully it's not this, because I don't think I'd make much of a living from these videos. No, I have a normal kind of 9 to 5 office job. I work for a company that produces e-learning courses for a whole bunch of like different companies and clients and stuff. So like if you've got an office job, if you've ever had to do one of those courses about like compliance or like online security or confidentiality or health and safety, it's stuff like that. I get to write those and make those, and it's a job I really, really like. It's a really nice job, and it means I get to work from home, which is fantastic. So which really cuts down on commuting time and cost. And because I don't have to commute to and from work, I have a lot of time in the mornings and at lunchtime and in the evenings to work on these videos. Like there's no way I'd be able to do this project if I was commuting to and from work, I don't think. So it's a really good job. I really like it. It lets me be really creative, and the people are really nice. It's overall a really, really nice job, and I'm probably going to stick with it for the foreseeable. Right, got another one, probably too late. What is your favourite Planeswalker lore-wise, and who is your favourite Planeswalker card? So that's interesting little nuance there to the question. So lore-wise, Koth of the Hammer is just great. I'm really happy he finally got an extra card in All Will Be One. Yeah, Koth, I just have a weakness for kind of like resistance fighters, like this kind of rage against the dying of the light kind of characters. Koth is a GM. Firstly, he's a red planeswalker who does something other than fire, which is great. He's more about like earth magic and like geomancy, which is super cool. And I just love the idea of him leading this resistance against like Phyrexia taking over. Just super good. Koth is great. I kind of wish he got more screen time, but I'm just happy to know that he was there on Mirrodin, like holding out, leading a resistance, and just wrecking Phyrexians. I'm just really happy with that. I would also say Nicole Balas, absolute lad. Like, who was just like, I was a god, and then Jace Beleren ruined everything. I think that's the story. And then like, oh, you know what? I'm just gonna like invade Ravnica and harvest a bunch of planeswalkers and become a god again. And in the meantime, I'll make Egyptian Hunger Games off to the side. Nicole Balas is pretty great. Really like. Both these cards I built decks round at some point in the past. It was just like Nicole Balas and a bunch of planeswalkers and no creatures and just spells, and it was just such a mean controlly Grixis deck. Yeah, these are my two favorite lore wise, and then mechanically, Tezzeret the Seeker, like the original one, really like this. Just a lot of really strong artifact synergies because like mono blue artifacts is really fun. Just really enjoyed using Tezzeret in a deck, and also Venser the Sojourner. He does like a really he has like a fun ability like to flicker stuff. His -1 I think is really strong. Like that is usually just enough to win a game, I find. But it's mostly about that flickering effect because I really like flicker effects to get multiple ETB or leave the battlefield effects. So I think these two mechanically are my favorites. I don't really have much experience playing with planeswalkers, honestly, just because at the time they were kind of expensive to get hands on. I know these days planeswalkers are kind of in high demand. They come in pretty much every product, but I used to only get them through the dual decks products. That was how I used to get them. So I don't have much experience using planeswalkers, but I think these are fine. These are probably my favorites. Right, once you've reviewed every single precon, even the weird ones like the Jewels of the Planeswalker tie-ins, the Ixalan board game, and the Finkel Garfield Duel Masters, what then? Start from the start. So, this is a question because obviously there's going to be an end to it because there's only so many pre-constructed products I can do. Honestly, I don't know. I had an original plan where I was going to go up to Shadows of Innistrad, just do the original kind of theme decks before they became Planeswalker decks. But there's been a lot of demand for doing Planeswalker decks and dual decks, so I'm probably going to do those. But I said by then, I think I'll have been doing it for about 2 years, and honestly, I think by then I'm gonna be pretty much burned out on it. Like I do like making these videos, but like 2 years solid of talking about precons is pretty tough. And as you say, like after planeswalker decks and dual decks and stuff, it starts getting into the weird for lack of a better term, the weird stuff like clash packs, and I say like the dual masters decks, or like battle royale, or the Ixalan board game thing like you said, or the Premier series, like some really weird weird products which like I just don't know if I can tackle those properly, or at least I would need to take, I think, a really good rest from doing it before I would come back and do those things. But I definitely want to go up to doing dual decks and planeswalker decks, and then I guess we'll just see. But yeah, there will this. I mean, this has always just been kind of like a project I wanted to do to take up. Just basically to fill my time. It was never, I've never been trying to build myself as a YouTube personality or anything. If I'm honest, that would be kind of my nightmare to make making videos like my full-time job. Like I have a normal 9 to 5. I'm fine. I'm not cut out to do this all the time. Honestly, I don't have the discipline or the personality for it. Honestly. So after doing this, I don't know, I'll probably get back into exercising because I haven't been exercising properly for ages. I came down with COVID like last September, and that has just completely wrecked me. And I'm not saying like using these videos as an excuse why I haven't been exercising, but yeah, I do spend a lot of time working on these videos, and I just haven't had the the inclination to get back into working out, so I should need to do that. Also, get back into writing. I haven't been writing probably because I like to write as well. I've written a few kind of novels, really like just for fun, just for myself. I did try self-publishing a few years ago, but it wasn't for me. So now I just kind of write for fun. So I'll get back into doing that. That's actually also partly why I started doing this project, because I had a bit of writer's block, honestly. So, but now I don't know. By the time I finish all these precons, I might have some juices flowing again, I suppose, and might get back into doing that. Write the next novel I got buzzing around in my head. But also, this I was thinking about this the other day, because I really like Persona 5 as a RPG, like really fun RPG, like super into it. Um, I was actually thinking the other day I would really like to do a series of videos where I discuss the history and like I guess symbolism of the main cast's personas, like as another little pet project. So I would do like a deep dive into say like Joker and like who's the main character. If you don't know anything about Persona 5, this is going to be nothing to you. But but like the main character Joker, his persona Arsène, I would do like a big deep dive into explaining like who Arsène Lupin is, and like what works of literature is, and just like the symbolism, like Arsene looks like this, which represents these themes in Persona 5, and it becomes, it turns into this persona, and what does that also represent, and how it, I say, ties into the themes and stuff of Persona 5. So that is an idea I've got kicking around in my head. It would be, I'd say, what, like 10 videos? But I would like to make those really good. I would like to really kind of learn more about like video editing and scripting and stuff. Those I would have to do like really properly, I think, to be satisfied with them. I wouldn't just ramble on about them. But yeah, that's just an idea I've got kicking around my head. I might do it, I might not. But yeah, it's just there. So that was all the questions, and you've eaten all the cake. So thank you for attending. Um, yeah, this was really fun actually, asking a bunch of questions. It feels really nice that people asked a bunch of questions, basically showed an interest in me and my life, and suppose, and like why I'm doing this project and stuff. So it was really nice actually. It's the first time I've ever done anything like this. So yeah, really appreciate the questions that people submitted. Um, so yeah, I just want to say thank you to everyone who submitted questions. At time of recording, it is early May now. I'm currently recording all the season 4 videos. We're up to. I'm about to start recording Return to Ravnica videos. So I've already got like 25 videos locked in, like M12, M13, and all of Innistrad. So that essentially gives me June already set up as a backlog, essentially. So I don't have to rush too much, but also I would like to get them all done and then make a start on season 5 visuals, like, because that's going to be a lot shorter. Yeah, I'm just rambling at the end now. So I am in my top 5, bottom 5 video, I said like, it might be June, might be July. It's definitely going to be June. I'll stick an exact date in a community post at some point. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed doing these questions, this mailbag. I hope it's been interesting. If you've sat through the whole thing, you're an absolute champion. But yeah, we'll be back in June with Precon Decon once again. So yeah, I just want to say, if you stuck around for this, this whole thing, thank you for listening to me ramble for like, I think, a solid hour it's been now. But yeah, it's been really fun. Been really fun. So I'm just gonna say goodbye, thank you, and have an amazing day, and we'll see you in June for talking about cards again.